Bear down, fam. One day out from Cleveland, Hollis Hall just dropped 3 bombs in 72 hours. The Bears just lost their starting safety for basically the rest of the season. And Ryan Poles answered so fast that in a minute, I'll tell you exactly who he brought in to fill that hole, though there's one thing about his injury history nobody's talking about. Meanwhile, Gervin Dexter, a key piece of that pass rush, wants a $21 million extension, but sources out of Hollis Hall can't agree on the real number. And to wrap it up, tomorrow decides the left tackle battle between Kieran Amagagier and Jedrick Wills, and one of them walks away without a roster spot. Bear down, fam. Okay, let us go slow here because this one stings. Kobe Bryant, the guy who was supposed to be the anchor of this secondary in 2026, is going to be out somewhere between 4 and 6 months. To put that number in perspective, counting from right now, mid-August, best case he is back around December, worst case he does not step on the field again until 2027. This is not a we lose him for 2 weeks and move on injury. This is losing your starting safety for essentially the entire regular season. And look, this is not a new topic for the channel. We have been talking about the depth crisis in the Bears secondary for a while now. Kobe Bryant and Kyler Gordon as the 2 names holding that unit together. And the one who goes down is the one who was carrying the most weight. That is how cruel this sport can be sometimes. How we got here. To understand why this hits so hard, you have to remember where Bryant was coming from. He signed his extension in the offseason. The front office treated him as the central piece of Dennis Allen's defensive plan. And he was, alongside Kyler Gordon, the backbone of a secondary that had some very high moments and some completely exposed moments in 2025. The plan for 2026 was simple. Bryant and Gordon locked in, a first-round rookie coming in to add a youth, and a unit that would finally stop being the structural weakness of this defense. That plan broke before the regular season even started. Now, here is what I think deserves credit, and this is what separates this front office from the one we had a few years back. Ryan Poles did not panic. He did not make a desperate phone call. He signed Xavier Woods, a 31-year-old veteran heading into his 10th season in the league. And before anyone says, oh great, another veteran Band-Aid, let me give you the real numbers because they are impressive. 121 career starts. He has been active for 134 games, 8,143 career defensive snaps entering year number 10. This guy has seen everything this league can throw at him. And here's the detail that jumped out at me the most. Woods is heading to his 5th team, and his 3rd in as many years. That normally sounds like a red flag, right? A player who cannot stick anywhere. But flip that story for a second. A player who walks into a new locker room, absorbs a different scheme, and starts producing almost immediately across 3 straight organizations. That is not instability. That is an extremely rare skill. It is literally what Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen need right now. Somebody who shows up on Monday ready to go by Sunday. And I will tell you something I have been thinking since I first read about this signing. This follows a pattern I recognize in Ryan Poles, and it is not a coincidence. This GM has spent years betting on players with complicated medical history, always at a discount, always trusting that the talent outweighs the risk. We saw it with Dayo Odeyingbo, we saw it with Grady Jarrett, we saw it with Kobe Bryant himself, and with Kyler Gordon. And now again, with Woods, 31 years old, coming off a year where he missed 6 games. This is not a criticism, understand me, it is an observation. Poles bets this way because the quality free agent market does not hand him cleaner options at the price he is paying. But it is a pattern, and patterns eventually catch up with you. Now, about the other side of this, let me be direct, because I do not want to sell it to you like a one-for-one replacement. Woods is not Bryant. Bryant, at his age, with his contract, with his development ceiling, was a long-term franchise piece. Woods is 31 and coming off a season where he missed 6 games with injury. He's not the savior of everything. He is, at best, a solid bridge, not a permanent solution. But here's the part that has me thinking differently about this move. The plan is not for Woods to carry the position alone. The plan is for Dylan Thieneman, this same draft class's first-round rookie, to start the season as the starter next to him. And honestly, this is exactly what we needed to hear, because the original plan was for Thieneman to have a learning year behind Bryant, absorbing the scheme slowly. Now, because of the circumstances, that clock gets pushed forward, and the way they are building this is smart. Woods carries the mental part, the coverage adjustments, the pre-snap communication, while Thieneman handles the physical part, covering ground, closing fast. It is basically the same model they used when they lost Drew Dahlman unexpectedly at center and brought in Garrett Bradbury. Do not panic, bring in proven experience, and let the young talent grow with a safety net next to him. Now, there's a third piece to this puzzle that almost nobody is mentioning, and it is Cam Lewis. Woods arriving lets Lewis stay locked in at the slot without having to shift to safety in an emergency. For a defense that already struggled in coverage, that is huge. When a player can specialize in one job instead of half learning 2, the consistency goes up. So this signing did not just patch one hole, it reordered 3 pieces at the same time. So where do I actually stand on all this? Honestly, calmer than I was on Monday when the Bryant news broke. With Woods guiding Thieneman and a healthy Kyler Gordon on the other side, I do not think this secondary collapses the way the initial panic suggested. But I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers, because there's one question I genuinely cannot solve. What happens in October and November when the physical wear starts catching up to a 31-year-old safety who already fell off the roster for 6 games last year? This franchise has already been burned trusting veteran depth that did not hold up for 16 full games, and I have personally defended some of those bets on this channel before they fell apart mid-season. I am not saying it happens again. I am saying I will be watching it with one eyebrow raised, not with my arms crossed. Let us shift topics, but stay in the same neighborhood, because if there is one unit that has dominated this franchise's conversation all summer, it is the defensive line, specifically the pass rush. And the name at the center of that conversation this week is Gervon Dexter. Quick context for anyone not following this closely. Dexter enters the final year of his rookie contract, a 4-year deal worth just over $6.7 million that he signed after being drafted in the second round back in 2023. That means he hits free agency in 2027 if Chicago does not move before then. And in the NFL, when a productive player enters a contract year without an extension signed, 2 things almost always happen. First, the general manager's phone starts ringing with other teams, asking if he is available, and second, the media pressure on that player spikes. Both of those already happened with Dexter. According to insider Jordan Schultz during the offseason, teams called directly to ask about his trade availability, citing that the free agent market at the position and the current draft class are not particularly deep. And the Bears' response, based on everything reported, was to shut that door fast. That tells me something. When a team gets calls about a player and cuts them off immediately instead of listening to offers, it is because internally they value that player more than the outside market assumes. On top of that, Dexter recently signed with Drew Rosenhaus's agency, one of the most aggressive representatives in the league when it comes to negotiating extensions. That is not a casual move. When a player in a contract year switches to an agent known for pushing hard at the negotiating table, it is usually because they are setting the stage to ask for a serious deal, and soon. Now let us get into the numbers, because this is where it gets interesting and honestly a little messy. On one side, a 247 Sports breakdown compared Dexter to Osa Odigizwa of the Cowboys, using that as the base for a projected 4-year extension worth $86 million, an annual average of $21.5 million, with $34 million guaranteed at signing. On the other side, Bleacher Report, cited by Heavy.com, suggests Chicago should get ahead of the market by offering him, quote, more than $25 million annually, to keep him from hitting the open market next year. Those 2 numbers are not the same, and I want to be upfront with you about that instead of pretending there is a consensus where there is not one. $21.5 million and $25 million are different projections from different analysts using different methods. What they do have in common is the direction. Everybody agrees Dexter is going to get paid like one of the top interior linemen in the league if he keeps producing like this. If you ask me personally, I lean toward the 247 Sports number, and let me explain why instead of just throwing that out there. The Odigizwa comparison feels more honest to me because both players hit their contract year with a similar profile, solid interior pass rush, but without a truly dominant season on the resume yet. $25 million is the kind of number you use when you want a headline, not necessarily the number that reflects the real market. But this is me reading the market, not a certainty. And if Dexter has an elite season in 2026, that $21.5 million ceiling is going to look cheap for the Bears very quickly. And speaking of production, let us talk real numbers, not projected ones. In 2025, Dexter finished with 44 tackles, 11 quarterback pressures, 6 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, and 2 forced fumble recoveries, all across 17 games. In his full career, he has 115 tackles and 13.5 sacks across 49 games played. That is not a marginal player fighting for a roster spot. That is a consistent starter on a defense that, let us be honest, has had serious problems generating pressure on the quarterback over the last 2 years. And that is exactly the tension that makes this story so interesting. The Bears desperately need their defensive line to improve the pass rush. Dexter is, alongside Montez Sweat, one of the central pieces of that improvement. But at the same time, the team has almost no cap space available right now. We are talking around $1 million available according to recent reports. So the question is not whether Dexter deserves the money. The question is where that money comes from when they also have to sort out extensions for other important names on the roster at almost the same time. What I like most about how Dexter is personally handling this is what he said a few days ago at Hallis Hall. And I am going to repeat it because I think it sums up exactly the right attitude for a player in this spot. He said he came into this year solely focused on getting better. understanding that everything else, the contract, the extension, is going to work itself out if he does his job well. To me, that is the mature approach. He is not using the press to publicly pressure the front office. He's not asking for a trade. He's betting that his level of play on the field will speak for him. And this has happened to me before with other names on this franchise, so I say it carefully. I think if Dexter has a season with 13 or 14 sacks, Ryan Poles is not going to have any other choice but to find the money, even if he has to restructure 2 or 3 other contracts to make it happen. But if Dexter stalls out at the usual 5 or 6 sacks, this extension conversation cools off fast, and Dexter's name shows back up in trade rumors around the October deadline. The Bears are not going to pay $21 million for potential. They are going to pay for confirmed production. And that production is not confirmed yet, only promised. And to close things out, let us talk about something that feels different from the first 2 stories. Because here we are not talking about million-dollar contracts or season-changing injuries. We are talking about a raw, almost Darwinian fight for a single roster spot. And tomorrow against Cleveland, we are going to start finding out who is winning it. Left tackle was, in theory, Ozzie Trappilo's job going forward. But Trapilo tore his patellar tendon back in January, and even though there are reports he could return sooner than expected, the organization's plan is still to operate as if he is out for most of the year. That leaves the position wide open, and right now there are 3 names fighting for it. Braxton Jones, who just returned to limited practice on August 13th after being hurt. Jedrick Wills Jr., a former top 10 draft pick joining as a free agent with 57 career starts at left tackle in Cleveland. And Kieran Amagaji, the 2024 third-round pick who is in the most delicate spot of the 3. Let us talk about Amagaji with the seriousness he deserves, because his story so far has been rough. In his rookie season, he played around 125 offensive snaps, mostly at left tackle, and he struggled badly with the responsibilities of the position. Then, in September of 2025, he hurt his elbow and ended up spending most of his second season on injured reserve. 2 years, basically 0 real development on the field. That is what he is carrying into this training camp, his 3rd in the league. But here's where it gets interesting. Over the past few weeks, with Braxton Jones out, Amagaji started taking first-team offensive snaps. And Ben Johnson talked about him this week, using language that, to be fair, is not pure praise or pure criticism. It is something honest in between. He said, word for word, that he has seen improvement compared to last year, but that there are still moments where consistency needs to get a little better. And he added something I think is telling, that Amagaji has a better understanding of the offense, that it is clear, and that his confidence level keeps rising with every practice he is out there. That kind of comment, coming from a coach as methodical as Johnson, is not press conference filler. It is a real evaluation with real nuance. Tomorrow against the Browns, Amagaji is going to start the first quarter at left tackle, then rotate with Wills for the rest of the game, quarter by quarter, so the coaching staff can compare them directly. It is literally a live audition. And honestly, I do not envy the pressure this kid is carrying, because he is not competing against some random backup. Wills was a top 10 draft pick, has real starting experience at this exact position, and according to Johnson himself, has the physical traits, long arms, the ability to mirror pass rushers. It is all there. The only thing he is missing is familiarity with the system, because he has not been in this offense for a full year like the others. And here is the part that worries me most as a fan who follows this roster closely. The cut projections have already started circulating, and they are not good for Amagaji. Bears Wire and Sports Illustrated, in their most recent 53-man roster projections, leave him off, keeping Wills as the starter and Theo Benedette as the backup swing tackle. And Mo Mouton of Bleacher Report went even further, naming him the, quote, most likely cut on the entire Bears roster before the regular season starts on September 13th, on the financial piece, which connects directly to how this front office thinks. Amagaji's rookie contract is worth around $5.9 million total. If the Bears decide to cut him during roster cutdowns, they would save around $1.33 million off his $1.61 million cap hit for this year. That number is not going to change the finance department's life over at Hollis Hall, but on a roster that is already tight on cap space, every dollar counts. And we just saw that with the Dexter situation a moment ago. And I want to sit with this for a second, because something about this situation genuinely bothers me as a fan. Amagaji arrived in 2024 to an offense that changed coaches a year later. He learned one system, they scrapped it, he had to learn another, and in the middle of all that, he hurt his elbow. That is not entirely on him. When you build your projection of a third-round player, you have to weigh the organizational chaos he lived through, not just what shows up on tape right now. That said, the NFL does not hand out extra time, and at some point, the mitigating circumstances stop mattering to the roster clock. And here, I am going to take a firm stance. No hedging. I think Amagagie has a real chance this weekend to change the narrative, but he needs more than just, quote, improvement. He needs a dominant performance, the kind that makes the analysts who already wrote him off have to erase what they typed. If he goes out there tomorrow and has another inconsistent game, giving up pressures and drawing penalties, that third-round project probably wraps up in a couple weeks, and it is going to sting, because this kid is coming off 2 genuinely hard years dealing with injuries, not a lack of effort. And to close on something lighter before the call to action, because you have earned it after all that dense analysis, the guy stealing Thursday's practice in the middle of this whole offensive line war is Tyson Bagant, the backup quarterback. He threw a 70-yard touchdown pass to Caden Davis, a receiver also fighting for the last roster spot, and after the play, he dropped a line that already became my favorite of the entire camp. Just 2 Division II cats being guys. That is the real spirit of a training camp. Players nobody bet anything on, building their moment through pure work. 3 stories that on the surface do not seem connected at all, but underneath they are telling the same story. This Bears roster in 2026 is being defined under real pressure, with injuries forcing improvisation, with contracts that are going to be decided by what happens on the field, not on paper, and with young players literally fighting for their careers in a single preseason weekend. Kobe Bryant is out, but Ryan Poles already proved, again, that he does not panic when he loses an important piece. Gervin Dexter has a chance to become the piece this defense needs in the pass rush, and this time, the money is going to follow the production. And on the offensive line, somebody is going to lose their job in the coming weeks, and that story starts getting written tomorrow against Cleveland. I could be wrong about some of this, honestly, and if that Poles pattern with medical risk blows up on me again in October, I will say so right here, no hiding from it. But today, with what is in front of me, here is what I see. A front office that no longer improvises out of panic when it loses an important piece, even while it keeps betting big on health, and a roster being built through hard decisions, not shortcuts. That leaves me optimistic and nervous at the same time, and honestly, that is what following this team feels like most years. Bear down, always. If this breakdown helped you out, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me down below. Are you sticking with Amagagie, or have you already written him off before the season even starts? See you in the next one.